Hello, my name is Julie Rowen, and my final project for RDG 592 is sentence expansion to support reading comprehension. Today I will begin by explaining why sentence level comprehension is an important part of reading comprehension. I will define sentence expansion and identify the students for whom this approach is designed, summarize the research supporting the approach, explain the instructional routine, and conclude by discussing my implementation of the lesson and recommendations for future use. It is important to begin by looking at two familiar representations that depict the complexities of reading comprehension. First, the simple view of reading tells us that reading comprehension is the product of decoding and language comprehension. Sentence expansion is designed to strengthen the language comprehension side of the equation by helping students better understand and produce increasingly complex sentences. Within Scarborough's reading rope, sentence expansion most directly supports the language structure strand while also engaging vocabulary, verbal reasoning, and even background knowledge. Calling on so many of the language comprehension components makes sentence expansion an impactful instructional strategy. Reading comprehension requires more than recognizing individual words. Students must also understand how words and phrases work together to express a complete thought or idea. When students have difficulty interpreting sentence structure, they may understand individual words, but still struggle to construct meaning from the sentence as a whole. Sentence expansion provides explicit practice with adding details and organizing those details meaningfully within a sentence, providing the reader with a more detailed understanding of a text. If students have difficulty understanding how words and phrases work together within a sentence, then simply exposing them to more text may not be enough. They may need explicit sentence-level instruction that helps them notice how structure contributes to meaning. Sentence expansion is one routine that provides that kind of guided practice. While direct research on sentence expansion is limited and focuses primarily on sentence combining, both are forms of explicit level instruction that require students to manipulate syntax and make decisions about how words and phrases convey meaning. Sentence combining has a well-established research base, while a resource from Marian University applies sentence-level work specifically through a sentence expansion routine intended to support comprehension. Let's look more closely at a few specific studies that support sentence-level instruction through sentence combining. Sadler and Graham found improvements in sentence construction, revision, and aspects of writing quality. Walter and colleagues also found significant improvement in sentence combining ability, and Sadler's review in 2018 concluded that sentence combining has a well-established research base for helping students construct more syntactically complex sentences. Together, these studies support explicit sentence-level instruction. So what is sentence expansion? Well, it begins with a simple kernel sentence. Students systematically add meaningful details by answering questions such as who, what, where, when, why, and how. Let's take a look at an example. Here we begin with the simple sentence, "The bird flew." Rather than simply making a sentence longer, the goal is to increase the amount of meaning contained within the sentence. Let's see how that was accomplished. The adjective colorful was added when the student was asked, "What kind of bird?" Here, the student added the adverb quickly when answering how the bird flew. The next two additions by the student were prepositional phrases. We can see the student answered where the bird flew and when the bird flew with a prepositional phrase before sunset. Now the reader has a more detailed, more meaningful picture in their mind. So the sentence, the bird flew, became, the colorful bird flew quickly across the quiet lake before sunset. As I stated, sentence expansion routine begins with a simple kernel sentence. The teacher then asks a question such as where, when, why, or how, and the student adds a meaningful word or phrase. After each addition, it is important that the sentence is reread to make sure it still makes sense. This process can be repeated to gradually build a more detailed sentence. Sentence expansion is a flexible instructional routine that can benefit many elementary students, particularly those who need additional support with sentence structure and language comprehension. Because the routine is highly scaffolded, it can be implemented effectively during whole class instruction, small group intervention, or individualized support beginning as early as preschool or kindergarten with oral language practice. To implement sentence expansion effectively, instruction should begin with simple, familiar kernel sentences so students can focus on adding meaning rather than decoding unfamiliar words. Teachers should model the thinking process before moving to guided practice and gradually release responsibility as students become more confident. Using sentences connected to recently read text also helps strengthen the connection between sentence level work and reading comprehension. Finally, the brief, consistent practice allows students to build these skills over time without feeling overwhelming. Progress can be monitored by listening for meaningful and grammatically correct additions, comparing sentence complexity and clarity over time, and noting how much prompting the student needs to complete the routine independently. The key takeaway is that sentence structure plays an important role in comprehension. Sentence expansion gives students explicit practice with how words and phrases work together to build meaning. Because the routine is brief and flexible, it can be incorporated into regular literacy instruction without requiring a separate program. For additional information, the Marian University resource within the Indiana Learning Lab provides the sentence expansion routine and implementation guidance used in this presentation. The Oak Hill, Kane, and Elbrow textbook offers a broader explanation of sentence level comprehension, syntax, and the language skills that support reading comprehension. The sources used to develop this presentation include research studies, instructional resources, the textbook, and foundational reading models discussed through the presentation. Thank you for listening.